Well, it's not a small question. How did the symposium affect my life? Sandy, you've got me filming again on top of the Swiss Alps, which is exactly where I was last time anyone asked me to do something for Pachamama. I was trying to think about it. Like, what's the answer to that question? The symposium was an absolute life changer, and I got to thinking about the one of the analogies that was actually in the symposium, I think, about the trim tab. You know, that tiny little rudder on the bigger rudders of those absolutely vast boats. And how it wasn't a trim tab, the symposium. It was like a bloody great mallet. It absolutely whacked my rudder and changed the whole direction of my life. It's like it hit me in a way that whacked the tuning fork that I really am into vibration. The knowledge of everything that the symposium lays out, which is utter logic around sustainability, spirituality, and in social justice, that triad of truth activated in my whole being and hasn't stopped vibrating ever since. And so anything that's not that no longer makes sense. And so right after the symposium, when I went out to India and found Project Green Hands, it was like I was a receiving mechanism for anything that was that triad embodied, and Project Green Hands was. So, you know, for me it was the trees, but it was people, and it was how do you shift consciousness so that we become sane? How do we come into a relationship with the natural world in a way that actually makes sense of ourselves as well as our innate naturalness, the fact that we are actually nature, but we've just become so ridiculously disconnected. And so Green Hands was an epic voyage for me, but it took me to the beginning of Tree Sisters, you know, the car crash in which Tree Sisters came, and then the journey for all of us who pick up missions that seem somewhat insane because of their scale, but are actually some form of a deep calling, some seeded possibility that's activated. And I think that's the word for me. Activation. I think that's what the symposium does, or it can do, if you're available. And I think it's trying to hit that tuning fork that is the truth of us, the truth of our indivisibility from nature, the truth of the consciousness that lives us, that lives everything, the waking up so that our intelligence begins to merge with nature in such a way that that intelligence starts to direct us, that we become available to it. So I can't do anything else. I mean, and that's the thing, there's nothing else to do. I can't imagine a life that isn't 100% given to some form of awakening in order to start to shape the sort of world that makes sense to my heart. And I don't think my heart is any different from anybody else's hearts. I think we're all longing, absolutely longing, for a relationship to life that makes sense. That we are life, and therefore how we would live would be beautiful and respectful and reverent and deeply sane, deeply loving, deeply nurturing as a restorer species, not a destroyer species. So, yeah, it was a defining moment in my life, and it did shift my rudder to a completely different direction, and that direction is one that only becomes clearer and clearer and clearer, and for that, God, I am so grateful. So there we have it, my own personal voyage of madness since the symposium.